Hey, welcome to the Bible Bros, where we like to explore nature and read our Bible at the same time. Today, we're going to talk about a subject called, being called. I don't know if you've heard this a lot or not, but I've heard a lot of people say over the years, God has called me to do something. Well, I'll give you an example. I've heard a lot of people say, I've been called by God to have this certain job. Or, I've been called by God to go into the mission field. Or maybe, I've been called by God to marry this certain person. Now, I'm pretty sure you can talk to a whole bunch of other people, and you've probably heard very similar things. Where do I go? But with this all being said, is this what the Bible is actually talking about when it says to be called? Well, let's look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we'll see. You see that rock over there? Yeah, that one? Think about it. If you were underneath that and that rolled over you, that would be a bad, bad day. All right, everyone, I hope you have your Bibles out to 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 10. You are witnesses, and God also, how devoutly and justly and blamelessly we have behaved ourselves among you who believe. As you know how we exhorted and comforted and charged every one of you, as a father does his own children, that you would walk worthy of God who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. So as we see in verse 12, it tells us that we are being called. But who is calling us? Well, it says that God is calling us. But what is he calling us into? Well, it shows us that he is calling us into his kingdom and glory. So what is the kingdom? Well, we see in Colossians chapter 1 that the kingdom was referred to as the church. He is calling us into the church. But how is he calling us? That is the next question. Now, we need to understand as well that this word calls, as we see in verse 12, this word in the Greek is kaleo, which means to invite or personally call out by name. So how does God call us? Well, look at verse 13. For this reason we also thank God without ceasing, because, all the way up here, when you received the word of God, which you heard from us, you welcomed it not as the word of men, but as it is in truth the word of God, which also effectively works in you who believe. So what can we learn from this? Well, we can learn is that God is truly calling us today. He's calling us to come out of sin and to go into the kingdom of his glory. But there is only one way to do that, and that is by obeying the word of God, the message that he's shown to us in the Bible. Just as we see in Romans chapter 6, starting at verse 17, it says, But God be thanked that though you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine to which you were delivered. So how do we become delivered from sin? Well, we obey God's calling through the Word of God.